konnichiwa, street dogs. Watashi wa Erikim desu. 안녕하십니까? Watashi wa Erikim입니다. Alright, I'm just trolling y'all. Alright, so the thoughts. A critique of political correctness. So what is one of the worst things kind of holding back free thinking and modern thought? Political correctness. So they call it PC culture, blah, blah. And it's actually interesting because I think a lot of people are becoming like, essentially kind of like PC Nazis. You know, there's the soup Nazi and then there's the grammar Nazi. And there's people who essentially want to just kind of critique the way you talk, the way you think, just for the sake of it. And the reason why this is important is because, to me, one of the greatest apex things in life is free thought, free speech, free thinking. And I'm starting to think too, even like our higher education system, our liberal education system, is really failing students and people because it discourages aberrant thought and thinking. And actually at least one of the good, like, because, you know, obviously there's a degree of brainwashing regardless of whatever you do. So for example, like even going to UCLA, right, like very left liberal, you know, kind of whatever kind of school. And so, you know, you're, you know, kind of obviously brainwashed towards more like liberal, you know, Democratic Party, left-leaning politics. Like, I don't think there's actually any serious institution in America, maybe besides like the Ivies, like Harvard, Yale, some of the other Ivies that are like a little bit more conservative in nature. Even Brown University is kind of like I mean, I really do like Brown University in the sense that it's kind of like the UC Berkeley of the Ivies, but, you know, still the bastion, the apex is like probably Harvard, and I'm sorry, Yale. Yale's awesome, but Harvard's still number one. Anyways, so the problem is, you know, like if you ever read 1984, the thought police is now the intolerant left or these random people on the internet who's trying to control the way you talk and even worse, the way you think. So, you know, it is of my belief, one of the great things about being an American is you have freedom of speech, freedom of expression, and no one could put a gun to your head and force you how to think a certain way. So political correctness is weird because we all know that politics is just a game. Like my friend Dave Paulson has this notion where politics is essentially like wrestling, like the WWF or the WWE. Yo, go on YouTube, search this. Donald Trump, WWF, WWE, WrestleMania, whatever. He was a fucking character on WrestleMania. So if you think about politics just being like WrestleMania, you know, we all know wrestling ain't real, where it's fake. Politics also fake too. It's just like who could rabble rouse the maximal amount in politics is the one who's gonna take the pie. So political correctness is essentially, it's like fake correctness. And there's two things. One, what someone said, and two, what they meant to say. So for example, and you know, it all depends, right? Because political correctness is always changing. Like for example, when I was growing up, you know, I was born in 1988. I'm 32 right now. So when I was growing up, the politically correct term to call Asian people was actually Oriental. Like that was the correct way to refer to an Asian person with reverence. You call them Oriental people, or I'm Oriental, right? And so it's hilarious because even my mom, right? She's like in her 60s now, right? Like she'll be talking to people, she's like, as an Oriental person, blah blah. And then sometimes like people kind of recoil, but it's like once again, it's always changing. And even one of my older scoutmasters when I was a Boy Scout, you know, Caucasian dude, right? He was like in his 80s or something like that. You know, he would talk about Asians as Orientals as well, or you know. And so, you know, he didn't say it out of spite or malice, but it was just like when he was a kid or a young adult or an adult, whatever, that's what he was trained was the correct way to reverentially speak about people's. Now, it's actually even funny because actually I remember when I was in school, You didn't call people black. Like, that was kind of like an insult. You would actually call people African American, which is actually the term I prefer, which is like a little bit more accurate because, if you look at the morphology or the facial structure of people, right, you can obviously see that like I'm of Asian descent, right? And similarly speaking, if somebody is from, Afro-Caribbean, Middle Eastern, kind of descent, of course everyone looks different. That's so obvious, right? And so, if you call someone like that, that's why I don't really like calling people black, because to me it's kind of like an insult. It's like, because in America, if you call somebody white or black, what you're really trying to say is white people, it's not like Caucasian, Caucasoid, Northern European, Eastern descent. You're essentially, when you call somebody white, you're essentially meaning to say high class, rich, privileged, pure, worthy, on top, right? If you call somebody black, or even worse, colored, you're saying calling somebody underclass, underprivileged, less intelligent, less resourceful, whatever it may be. And so that's why I think it's better for, if you're in America, everyone should just call each other American. And it's actually more important, just be like, yo, where did you grow up? Because I actually have more in common with, let's say, a Mexican American who grew up in the Bay Area than I do with a South Korean from South Korea, right? We all grew up to like Pop-Tarts and, Cartoon Network or whatever it may be. And that's actually why I actually even ask people like, their age. Like, it's so funny because in Vietnam, it's actually very common to ask people, the first question you ask them is like, how old are you? Anh bao nhiêu tuổi? Like, how many years do you have? Or even actually in Korea, they do it a little bit more low key, is they actually ask, what year are you born? So it's kind of a nice way of asking how old you are. Because it's, to me, part of it is like, obviously it's like a hierarchy thing, but also part of it is a practical thing where if I ask somebody, how old are you? They say I'm 30 or 35 or 32. I'm like, oh, yo, we kind of grew up at the same time. Like, who's your favorite Pokemon? And any kid who was born in late 80s, early 90s, even kids nowadays, everyone has a favorite Pokemon. So to me, it's a way that everyone could be a little bit less fake and honest about, who they are and stuff like that. Anyways, so political correctness, when people try to correct me, it's like, oh, you shouldn't say that, that's not politically correct, or that's not woke, or whatever. And I call people like, a lot of people who are woke are essentially like fake woke. They're not trying to be politically correct or talking a certain way for this because they actually care and respect for other people. It's more like they're trying to go on a moral high horse to feel superior to other people. Because once again, there's people who cherry pick your argument or your quote out of context, and they do it to like, haha, fucking gotcha, right? Rather than actually trying to propose what they really meant to say. And that's actually even why nowadays I don't trust no media, because you just have to read the raw transcript, and then you have to see the before, middle, and after. Read the whole fucking thing, and then you'll realize what, like, if, for example, when Elon Musk took a hit of weed during Joe Rogan's podcast on the first one, everyone's like, oh, Elon Musk smokes weed, he's a bad person, blah, blah. I'm like, dude, watch that fucking interview. It's like, he took his, he's like, I don't really like it, smoking weed is the opposite of drinking a cup of coffee. But the media, whoever owns the media, whatever, owns us, I don't even think the media is evil per se. It's just like their onus or their raison d'etre or their reason of existence is to maximize their advertising dollars, right? So the more people who click on their whatevers and the more people click on their Google AdSense ads, the more money they're gonna make, which is fine. That's the point of a corporation and a company, to make more money. But it's really bad for us as individuals because essentially we get suckered into, getting a distorted view of reality. So effectively what I'm going to say is political correctness is bad because it distorts our sense of reality, is bad because you end up having your thoughts being squished into a procrustin bed of thinking boring and generic. So let's kind of like unplug ourselves from the matrix, take the red pill, and be a little bit more critical on how we speak. And rather than trying to fucking gotcha people, try to understand what they mean to say rather than what they actually said.